October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So taking a look at the numbers across the country, 1 in 3 women is a victim or will be a victim of intimate partner violence. Now in Washington state, that number jumps to 41%. And for Indigenous women, it's even more, with 55% of Indigenous women experiencing domestic violence. And the problem doesn't just stop there. Indigenous women and even men are more likely to be murdered and go missing than any other ethnic group, even though they make up less than 2% of our population. So I sat down with activists in our community, as well as victims' family members, to dig deeper and find out what's being done to save and protect our sacred sisters. It's been just over a year since Elima Byrd's sister Kamiah was killed in Las Vegas.
She liked to travel, she liked good food, and when she loved you, you knew it.
Since then, the family says they've gotten little help from law enforcement there in solving her case.
All I ever hear from our family is there are no leads.
Unfortunately, having a family member go missing or be murdered happens far too often in many Indigenous families.
It's just to have, somebody actually say to you, it's probably never going to get solved, because she's Indian and because she's Black. And I just don't feel like that's okay. It's not okay to say that it's not okay to say that to a family member.
According to the Department of Justice, the amount of Indigenous women living on tribal lands who are murdered is 10 times the national average.
Death is just something that we grow up knowing and dealing with.
Andrea Rose is another person who knows just how substantial this problem is.
It shouldn't be up to us, the families out there searching for these people, for our loved ones. It shouldn't be up to us. We should be getting more help.
So is 14-year-old Leah Lonebear. Her mother, Olivia, was reported missing in October of 2017. In July of the next year, police found her body inside a truck in a North Dakota lake. To this day, there have been no leads in that case.
I was just really sad, and I didn't have anybody to talk about it with, and I don't like people being hurt the way that I was and how it affected me.
A 2016 report from the National Institute of Justice says that more than 4 in 5 American Indian and Alaskan Native people have experienced violence in their lifetime.
We already walk in this world differently. We have to clench our purse. We have to clench our keys. We have to park in a lighted area. And that's something that men don't think of. And, even Caucasian women who don't face the same repercussions.
About 33% of women across the country will or have experienced domestic violence at some point in their lives. For Indigenous women, that number goes up to 55%.
The Indigenous population is like 1.8% of the total population in the Spokane area, and for us, they make up about 3% of the total domestic violence, which, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you look at it, it's almost double. And that's double the ones where law enforcement's involved.
People of color and Indigenous people have historically had problems trusting law enforcement, which can often lead to people in these communities being afraid to report a violent attack. It's something Sergeant Jordan Ferguson with the Domestic Violence Unit at the Spokane Police Department says is always top of mind.
There's lack of trust with law enforcement, which is why this department works so hard in our community outreach, trying to establish that trust.
Haley Abrahamson works for the Spokane Regional Domestic Violence Coalition and is a member of the Spokane Tribe. She says another thing that keeps victims from coming forward is fear of being shamed or blamed for what happened.
There's been a lot of issues where people try to make that report, but there's victim blaming, there's victim shaming. Sometimes something happens in the process because the process is super outdated, so not everything is reported.
Even if victims want to come forward and file criminal charges, it can often be a daunting process, especially if they live on a reservation.
People don't know where to report, who to report to, who does have jurisdiction over that case, like mentioned, right? Is it the FBI? Is it the tribal police? Is it a local municipality, right? Is it the sheriff's department? It's our system here in the city of Spokane is confusing, and then to add in the federal government and tribal organizations is just a whole nother layer of confusion.
Local, state, and even the federal government is working to try and curb the violence plaguing our Indigenous women, because it doesn't just impact one family or even one tribe. It affects our entire community.
And we're all connected as a community because family's so big with us, so we're all connected. And when one person goes missing on from one tribe, you know, it hits all of us.
So I know those were a lot of numbers that I kind of threw at you there during that story, but one thing that really stands out to me is if you break it down to people, right? So if you put 5 Indigenous women in a room side by side, 4 out of 5 of them are either victims or will be a victim at some point in their lives.
That is, it's just staggering to hear those numbers and then putting a visual to it like that. And you know, Spokane has such a huge Indigenous population, and so we, like that last person said, we're all connected as a community.
Absolutely.
We all need to step up and help out our neighbors during something like this.
And thankfully, we do have a lot of resources here that are helping, not just with the back end, not just after like a person is a victim and they're trying to escape these violent situations, but also on the front end in doing prevention tactics, whether that's with the youth, with young children, and even going out to some of the reservations and putting in like different types of prevention counseling even for children. So if you would like to find out more about what's being done to stop violence against Indigenous women, you can text the word SAVE to 509-448-2000. We'll send you a link with all of our resources that we have right to your phone. And you can also go to our website, crim.com, for a list of those resources as well.
Yeah, and Shani, we are wearing purple today. We match every day.
We do.
But today is a special day. Tell us a little bit more about the significance of wearing purple, because it is something that people can do today and any day to show support for this.
Absolutely. So wearing purple, especially during October, it is the color for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And it's one of those things, like you'll see people sometimes with the ribbons, the purple ribbons on, just to highlight your personal connection or show that you're an advocate, show that you care about these women and these men who are experiencing domestic violence, because that's another thing to emphasize. It's not just women, because men are often victims as well. And at the end of the day, we all have to work together to stop the violence.